we're doing around Access, which are based on another programme of events we did last year in June with Credit. And as part of that, we wrote Art for Anyone Acess workbook, which is available for anyone who wants to think more about Access. And the things I'm talking about today are all in that workbook as well if you want to access them. I'm an artist. I have a studio here at Marine Studios in Margate, but I'm not from a typical arts background. I grew up in a council estate on the edge of Worthing in Sussex. We didn't have a lot of art. There wasn't a lot of art going on a council estate. But my English teacher, when I was about 13, asked me to man the follow spot for the drama club production at school. And I loved it. I loved that sense of being part of what was going on, being part of the show that was happening without being at the front. I was never confident enough to be on stage. And from that I started working at the Connaught Theatre in Worthing. And the Connaught had set up a youth dance company and a youth theatre company, both of which were full of the kind of middle class people you'd expect to be part of those things. But they'd also set up a youth technical crew. It was the first youth technical crew in the country, and I'd loved being involved in drama club. I got involved in the youth technical crew at the Connaught in Worthing and was exposed week after week to Treshall Theatre Company, to Theatre de Complicité and Simon McBurney, to Siobhan Davies Dance Company, to Roger McGough the poet, to all of this stuff. And it opened my eyes to this world of the arts that I didn't know was out there. I had no idea all this stuff was going on. We'd never really been to theatre or seen any of this stuff. And the reason I'm telling that story is because it's really important that Stephen Holroyd, who was the technical manager at the Connaught, Martin Harris, who was the administrator, they held the door open. They held the door open to all of us people who wanted to come in and see things, who'd never had the chance to see it before. And that's what Access is. Access is holding the door open for other people to come in and join us. I think it's really important that we all think about Access in all of our work, and it will make it part of the work from the start. It's not an add-on, it's not something we bolt on afterwards, it's an important part of the work from the start. I've worked with organisations like Talking Birds in Coventry, Turner Contemporary here in Margate, Threshold Studios in Northampton, B Arts up in Stoke, to look at projects around Access in lots of different ways. Having done lots of work, I still don't have all the answers, and I don't think anyone can have all the answers to Access because it changes, it shifts so frequently. But I do think we need to have more conversations and to learn to ask the questions. In 2021, with Talking Birds in Coventry, as part of City of Culture, I created an artist manifesto for Access, which is this lovely document here that should be on every studio wall. There are some of the things that are in that manifesto that I want to start with because I think they're important starting points. Be kind, be generous, and share to help others learn. That's the heart of so much of the work of people like Talking Birds, and it's really important. We've got to share, we've got to share the knowledge, the skills, the experience we have, and that's why we're here today doing this session from Marine Studios. Some of the other headlines from that manifesto: act as an advocate for Access. Start with the question, what do you need? Hold Access as a conversation at the start, then keep having it. As I said, don't bolt it on at the end, it's core, it's part of the work. And if you do that, it becomes joyful and fun as well. Start with something, then try and do something more. Do the bit you can do. The way something works isn't the way it always works. Quite often, people's Access needs change over time and change day to day with the different things they're dealing with. So it's not always going to be perfect. It's always a work in progress. Most importantly, I think the headline, and we've got it as the strapline across the bottom of the manifesto for Access, is good Access is good for everyone. If we do this stuff, everyone has a better experience, not just the people that you think you're doing the work for. So Access Riders is what we're going to talk about this afternoon. An Access Rider is a really simple, easy to read document that says what the author needs to be able to do the work they do to the best of their ability. It's a really useful thing when working on a project or starting work with a new organisation or working with someone you haven't worked with before, to be able to say, here's my rider, this is what I need. I use the word rider, other people call it a statement or something else, but a rider is, in the music industry and in the theatre industry, the part of the contract that says what the artist needs, what equipment, the stage size, what refreshments they need before the show, and so on. So it's a standard thing. It's a thing that people can understand if they work in these industries. They know what an access rider is. So we're not asking them to do something new and difficult and complicated. Access riders are used by rock stars and performers all the time. They're just called riders in that case, and no one bats an eye at them. They're just there, they're standard. I was introduced to the idea of access riders by a friend and a neighbour. I lived in Arlington House in Margate, just upstairs from Lizzie Rose, Margate artist who had Crohn's disease and was a big champion of access riders, an absolute pioneer in this work. She died in January 2022, and every time I do one of these workshops about access riders, I say I'm doing it for her, because this is for her. You can find out more of her work at accessdocsforartists.com. Lizzie, incidentally, was based at Crate, who are supporting today's session. Lizzie was an advocate for every disabled artist having an access rider, but I will go further. I think everyone should have their own access rider, even those people who don't see themselves as disabled. Perhaps even especially the people who don't perceive that they're disabled and have any access needs. Because writing one helps you to think about what you're doing and the conditions we all need to make our best work. And if you're coming from a point of not having any access needs, writing this document will help you to understand some of the other things that are going on. It gives us some empathy with the needs of other people. And like the manifesto says, good access is good for everyone. There's no set structure to writing an access rider. These aren't, there's not a template, there's not a formula to write these. It's your own document and it changes with you. The only thing I'd say is essential is that this is a live document. It's not a thing that's static, that you've written once, that you never go back to. It's a live document, it changes. Change it, test it, refine it, adapt it. I'm going to talk you through my own access rider as an example, but as I say, this is not definitive. So I start with an introduction. This document has been formed to help project partners, venues and collaborators understand how they can support me with regards to my access needs. Just saying, I want you to read this, it's important at the start. I say it's a live document, it's part of an ongoing process. And I also say, I think this is really important, this document is not a set of demands but a discussion, and questions can be asked if clarification is needed. I also say this rider forms part of any contract, and in the music industry and theatre industry the rider is absolutely a set part of contract, so that's completely acceptable. I align myself, and I say in my access rider, with the intersectional social model of disability, and that says people are disabled by barriers in society, not by their impairment or difference. Barriers can be physical, like buildings not having accessible toilets, or they can be caused by people's attitude to difference, like assuming that disabled people can't do certain things. The social model helps us recognise barriers that make life harder for disabled people. Removing these barriers creates equality and offers disabled people more independence, choice and control. So I frame that, it's in my document, this is what disability is. Second part of my access rider is about communication, and I say Dan is happy with communication by email, phone or video conferencing. I also say with email I prefer clear, simple writing and may miss tone and subtext. I'm famous for sending blunt emails in response, so I say I will respond with short factual replies. Being really clear about why I need this, what I need and why I need it. I lay out my travel arrangements, so I've got a section in mine on travel. A lot of my work is outside Margate. I say I need a quiet private hotel room with ensuite within walking distance of the workplace. So nothing fancy, but I'm really clear on what I want. The only time I've ever walked out on a gig and not done a gig that I was booked for. Was a festival, really nice looking festival, that sort of community and activism and DIY culture. And I'm in my 40s, I wake up in the night, I usually need the toilet, I snore, I tend to dribble in my sleep, and the people booking this festival got in touch 5 days before the event and said, we've decided it'd be more fun if rather than book you into a hotel, we're going to put you all up in a barn and you can sleep communally together in a barn. I can think of nothing worse. It's the only time I've ever pulled out. So I'm really clear on what I need because of who I am and my age. I then have a section on workspace and how I fit into a workplace. I'm really, marine symbiosis is really good for neurodivergent people like me, but some workspaces aren't. So I say, I like a tour of the workplace when I first arrive. I like to be shown where things are. I'm happy to work alongside other people, happy to join meetings, workshops and conferences. I am a collaborative artist. I've no problems working with other people, one-to-one or in groups. And I say that I'm happy to talk or present to meetings, workshops, conferences. Then I say, however, I'm not at my most productive in open plan offices with constant interruptions. Because I'm not. I get distracted, I can't hear what's going on, so I need somewhere that I can focus. I say after a busy day, I prefer to be alone for a while, because quite often I just need to go and sit somewhere and decompress, rather than being dragged out for drinks or whatever all the time. I say that I have problems remembering names and faces, so I'm not being rude. If I struggle to remember your name, it's not that I'm rude, I just have a problem with that, they don't go in. And I say, the other thing I say is that fluorescent lights can increase my tinnitus and bring on vertigo. So these are really specific things. They're really specific things that I've thought of that over time impact on how I can work and how I can work best. Noise, I cover noise. Dan's tinnitus can be triggered by loud noise. It can bring on vertigo, dizziness. If it's bad, I'll have problems focusing, may suffer anxiety and tiredness. And I say, if I look distracted, it might be tinnitus. Quite often, if I'm struggling, it's because I've got the ringing in my ear and there's something else going on, and I just can't cope with that. I say that I'm sensitive to loud, constant noises, vacuum cleaners, extractor units, tumble dryers, those kind of things. So really specific things. There's really clear, precise, specific things in this access rider. Then I talk about my asthma. I'm asthmatic. I use inhalers. So I say I might need a minute to catch my breath after climbing stairs or walking uphill. Quite often you should barrel into an office and expect you to fly straight in. I can't always do that. I need that minute to get my breath back. So all of that is really specific and it's really about me. And that's what an access rider has to be. It has to be clear, precise, defined things. There's no point putting vague things in here. It's got to be precise and clear, and what the solution is as well as the problem. So I think it's a simple enough model, and I'm happy to put this online. I'll share my access rider with anyone that wants if you want to use that as a model. But it's really important that it's focused not on my internal problems but on the external stuff. It's about the stuff that people can help me to fix. It's focused on the things that would impact on me, stop me working, and how they can always be quite easily addressed. None of those things are particularly difficult, particularly me being precious. So assuming that that makes sense, I'd like you all to have a go at writing your own access rider. I'd like everyone to write one, and if you want help, feedback, once you've had a go, come back to me. When you're doing it, think about the stages of how you're going to be working with a new organisation or on a new project. So the first reception, the first time you meet people, what are your needs at that point? In meetings, if you're having regular meetings, what are your access needs within those meetings? If you're working in a specific place, if you're working in an office, workspace, co-working space, studio, what are the things within those spaces that you need to be addressed? And finally, what are the routines? What are your personal routines that help you function best? One of the things that had a huge impact on my life was starting to recognise a few years ago that I'm at my best early in the morning and early in the evening. That after lunch I tend to kind of slump and get distracted. That's my personal routine. So sticking me in a place where you want me to do the really clever stuff in the afternoon, you're not going to get the best. So what are your routines? What are your personal routines, and how can the project work around those? I'd also think, what access barriers have you encountered in the past? Think about the moments in the past where you've really been impacted, where you've really had trouble. What are those moments in the past that you can pull on? And in a worst case scenario, what would absolutely stop you being able to do the project at all? What's the thing that would really grind you to a halt, really make it stop? Think about that as well. And if it's for a particular project or a particular new client, think about what situations do you expect to happen during the course of that project. What are the moments in that project? If you've got a timetable of the project, if you've worked with Arts Council or National Lottery Heritage Fund, you've got a grant application, look at your milestones, your timetable. What are the points in the project where you might need some extra help? This is from that Access Docs website that I mentioned earlier, and I think it's a really important point in all of this. You don't have to explain why you need each thing. You should feel empowered by this, not exposed. For example, if you know you'll need to be able to get to a toilet quickly at all times, you can just say that. You don't have to justify yourself. And that's why these things are important and empowering if you do them well. Why I think access riders are so important, because they give you the power back to take some control over where you're working, how you're working. This isn't the end, this isn't the only solution. It's one idea which I think helps us to talk about the problems of access and helps organisations understand the challenges we face and understand that all of our challenges are different. That's really important. Organisations tend to default to seeing, here's a solution, we put a ramp in, we put a hearing loop in, but we need personalised, tailored solutions. I'd really like you all to get on with writing an access rider after watching this, listening to this, and I'm happy to help if you want to get in touch. But remember, it's your document, format it the way you want, the way that empowers you the most. But think about the situations you're going to be in, what barriers you might encounter, the barriers you've encountered in the past and how you could have navigated through those. Focus on the external things that disable you, not on the internal stuff, on the external stuff that can be controlled and helped by somebody else. And also keep it in plain English. Avoid jargon, avoid language that's specific to your disability, to your set problems that somebody else might not understand. Write it in plain English, and then other people can understand what you're saying and are best able to help you. A huge thank you to Lizzie Rose for getting me started on this. Just having this document has helped me to talk about the problems, and it is hard. There is a moment when you're writing this, you think, am I worth this? Do I deserve to have this attention, this extra help? You absolutely do, because by doing it, you can do your best work. And for whoever you're working with, they want you to do your best work as well. Just a quick reminder of that Talking Birds Access Manifesto before I finish. Act as an advocate for access. Once you've done this, tell other people, shout about it, act as an advocate for this stuff. Hold access as a conversation at the start, then keep on having it. Keep talking about this stuff. It's not static, it's not fixed once. We need to keep talking about this. Start with something, then try and do something more. Start with your basic access rider and work it up, add to it, grow it over time as you need. It's always a work in progress, and most important of all, good access is good for everyone.